Okay, we're going to take the route through Montana. Like I said, if we were living in Montana, we would go a little bit more into detail, but we'll just kind of get through it. It was on April 7th of 1805 that the Corps of Discovery left the Mandan villages. Okay, it was on April 7th of 1805 that the Corps of Discovery left the Mandan villages. Now they're heading for the mouth of the Yellowstone River, and that's where the Yellowstone River would run into the Missouri River. And it was just outside your map there that we have of Montana. You can see where the two rivers are coming together, and the mouth of the Yellowstone River is actually in present-day North Dakota. Now, as they leave on April 7th, 1805, and as they reach the mouth of the Yellowstone River, what is the major concern that Lewis and Clark have on their minds? Anybody know what their major concern is?
Getting to the mountains.
That's right. Where are these rugged, rocky mountains they have heard of? They don't know if they're within the next 10 miles, so to speak, or the next 300 miles. But that's their concern, because they have heard rumor through fur trappers, etc., that there are these enormous rocky mountains that they're going to try to get across, and to get to the Pacific Ocean, you're going to have to cross those. So as they continue their journey from the mouth of the Yellowstone into Montana, their major concern is where is the location of these rugged, rocky mountains. Now, once they reach these rugged, rocky mountains, their concern grew to how they're going to get across them, okay, because they are rugged. Well, as we watch, they reach the mouth of the Yellowstone River by the end of April of 1805. And again, as I mentioned, they're very close to present-day eastern Montana. So by the end of April 1805, the Corps of Discovery will reach the mouth of the Yellowstone River, which is very close to present-day eastern Montana. Now, they could have gone two ways, right? They could have gone south, or they could have along the Yellowstone, or they could have gone north along the Missouri. Why did they stay on the Missouri track rather than go the Yellowstone track? Why did they make the choice to stay north? Anybody want to guess on that? Why did they make that choice? Again, they didn't know which way to go, right? Unless somebody told them. Right, Black Calf had informed them to stay the northern right on the Missouri River. Okay, he said the northern route would be the route that would take them to the Pacific. That's the advice he gave them. So the expedition will travel the northern route, staying on the Missouri River as directed by the Mandan Indians and Chief Black Calf. Well, as you look at your map, by mid-May of 1805, the Corps of Discovery continues up the Missouri River, and they pass the mouth of the Milk River. They pass the mouth of the Milk River. Now, the Indians had already named the Milk River. They called it the river that scolds all others. But Lewis and Clark changed the name to the Milk River. So again, in mid-May of 1805, the Corps of Discovery continue up the Missouri River, and they pass the mouth of what is known now as the Milk River. The river was originally called by Native Americans the river that scolds all others. But Lewis and Clark changed the name to the Milk River. Why did they call it the Milk River? Anybody know?
Easier to say.
What?
Easier to say.
No? What's that? The white water. Right. The water was kind of milky because what time of the year is it? Mid-May. And what's happened by mid-May? The snow is melted, and how are the rivers running? Clear? No, they're running kind of muddy or milky, and that's where they got the name and called it the Milk River. Well, they continue along the Missouri, and on June 2nd of 1805, they reach the mouth of the Marias River. You can see it on your map there, the Marias River. They reach the mouth of the Marias River. They also named that river. It was named after Meriwether Lewis's cousin, Mariah Wood. So on June 2nd of 1805, Lewis and Clark reached the mouth of the Marias River, And this river was named for Meriwether Lewis's cousin, Maria Wood. And the expedition is going to camp at the mouth of the Marias River for 10 days, from June 2nd, 1805 through June 12th of 1805. They're going to stay there 10 days. So on June 2nd, 1805, Lewis and Clark reached the mouth of the Marias River, which they named in honor of Meriwether Lewis's cousin, Maria Wood. The expedition would camp in the vicinity of the Marias River for 10 days, from June 2nd, 1805 through June 12th, 1805. And they would later name this point Decision Point. They would name this point Decision Point. Now, the reason it was called Decision Point is Lewis and Clark aren't sure whether they should continue up the Marias River, that's the way to the Pacific, or they should continue down the Missouri. They didn't get any information from Black Calf that far down, or excuse me, upstream. So they get to the Marias River and they're thinking, well, gee, maybe we need to go north on this waterway to get to the Pacific, or maybe we need to stay and go south on the Missouri. They don't know for sure which way to go. So what do? Well, before that, well, kind of. You're pretty close. What happened is Lewis and Clark decided to split up. Lewis would take and follow the Marias River with a few men to the north, and Clark would follow the Missouri River to the south. And they tried to determine which way to go. Okay, so they split up. Lewis took men and went north along the Marias River, and Clark took men and went south down the Missouri. Now, how would they know whether they're going the right way or not? Because the Mandan Indians did give them a little bit of information. They said, you are to follow the Missouri until you find this great waterfall. And when you find this great waterfall, you know you're on the right path to the Pacific. So both men are looking for a great waterfall as they travel. Well, Clark is the one that locates this great waterfall, and so he and Lewis reunite back at Decision Point and decide that the expedition will continue to go south on what was now known as the Missouri River. Now, this decision was crucial that they went the right way. Okay? And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. Maybe you know those. Why is it crucial that they pick the right water route? Okay? They don't have any idea where they're going, right? In a way. So if they choose the incorrect route, where would they be close to when winter hit the next time? Where? Think if they follow that, where are they going to be? Or even southern Canada. It's going to be very cold, so that would have been very difficult for them. They would have been forced to winter in the high mountains. That would not have been good, probably deadly for them. Okay? So choosing the incorrect route, if they'd have gone north, by the time winter hit, they would have been into Canada, would have been forced to winter in those high Rocky Mountains and maybe not made it. So there's one reason why this decision was crucial. Is because if they would have gone north, by winter they would have been in Canada, it would have been incredibly cold, and they would have really struggled with winter in the high mountains. It was bad enough in the plains of Mandan to survive. In the mountains in the winter would have been way better, or way worse, excuse me. Now, also, the second reason why it was crucial they chose that route is that if they would have gone the incorrect route, they obviously would have not gotten to their goal, and they were afraid their men would have lost interest. Okay? You travel so long and don't find what you're looking for, pretty soon you lose interest. So choosing the incorrect route would have taken the expedition way off course, with the men losing their interest in the expedition. But obviously the most crucial reason is if they chose the incorrect route, they would have never located the Columbia River and never gotten to the Pacific Ocean. Okay? So the third reason it was important that they made the correct decision at Decision Point is if they would have gone the wrong way, they would never have located this Columbia River that they had heard of, which they knew was the gateway to the Pacific Ocean. So they stay there, and they continue on June 12th, 1805, and by June 13th, 1805, they have reached the Great Falls of the Missouri River. Anybody been to Great Falls? I was a teacher in Fort Benton, Montana with Mr. Smith, and Decision Point was about 30 miles away. One of the coolest things ever, because you could stand right where Lewis and Clark stood, and you could see the Marias and you could see the Missouri. It was just really kind of a cool place. And not far from there is the Great Falls of the Missouri. Okay, and they are a big waterfall near Great Falls, Montana. Now you got to remember, this was back in the old days, and you got to also remember they were traveling upstream, correct? So it's going to take them almost a month for them to get around the Great Falls of the Missouri, because they're not going to float up the Great Falls, are they? They're going to have to walk around them. And there were 5 waterfall cascades that they would have to get over. 5 different waterfall cascades, and obviously they're all uphill because they had not reached the Continental Divide yet. Okay, so this water is flowing against them, and there are 5 waterfall cascades in the Great Falls. And they're forced to haul their canoes, their supplies, their equipment, all of that, and it was 17 miles around the Great Falls of the Missouri. That's why it took them so long. Okay? So it's going to take them a month, and there's several reasons why it's going to take them a month. First of all, they were going around 5 waterfall cascades all uphill. Secondly, they had to haul their canoes and supplies and all their equipment around a 17-mile route. The terrain, number 3, was very, very rough. It was rough terrain to go around. It's another reason why it took them so long. Any of you guys ever went camp? I went camping at West Tensleep Lake, and I lasted about a night. Why? It wasn't cold. What? Oh, the mosquitoes were just horrid. Well, one of the reasons it took these guys so long to get around the falls is that the mosquitoes and gnats were incredibly thick, especially around the falls, because what is there? Water. So it's like West Tensleep Lake. I mean, I can't even imagine the magnitude of difference, because we have ways of taking care of mosquitoes now. They didn't. The only thing that was going to run off a mosquito for those fellas is their bad smell, probably.
So it took them a month to cover 17 miles?
It did, to carry everything they had. Yep. It took a month to go 17 miles from the bottom of the falls to where they could maneuver. Yep. What else might they be fighting in that area as they moved those canoes and equipment and everything 17 miles?
Indians and
What's that?
wildlife.
No, what type of wildlife?
Bears.
Grizzly bears. Yeah, the area was swarming with grizzly bears, so they had lots of issues with grizzly bears. So, as Pudge says, it seems like, my God, it shouldn't take them a month to go 17 miles, but under the circumstances of the terrain, the cascading falls, and the grizzly bears, the mosquitoes, and the fact they had to pack everything, that's how long it took them. Now, when they got around the falls, the next thing they were trying to locate through information was the Shoshone Indians. They wanted to get a hold and meet with the Shoshone Indians, because they got some really tough terrain coming, and what are they going to want for the first time in the expedition to get over? Horses. That's exactly right. So as the expedition continues past the Great Falls of the Missouri, it is crucial that the expedition locate local Shoshone Indians that they had rumored were in that area, because they were going to try to purchase horses, because the terrain that's upcoming is going to be the toughest terrain, and horses are going to be the easiest way to accomplish that. Now, they were an elusive tribe, so Lewis and Clark split up again to try to locate where these Shoshone Indians are, because they want to sit down with them and negotiate the purchase of horses. So they're a very elusive tribe. They don't like to be seen. Lewis and Clark split up in search of this Indian tribe. Now, when they split up, it was different than Decision Point. Clark basically stayed with the expedition, and they continued upriver. Okay, they just continued moving upriver. Lewis took a scouting party to specifically try to find the Shoshone, with the thought that maybe Clark had run into him as he continued his journey, but Lewis was the one that actually went out and scouted him. Now, your map would be crucial when we get to this point so you understand all of these particular rivers we're going to be talking about. Well, finally, on August 17th of 1805, Lewis and his men made contact with the Shoshone Indians. Finally, on August 17th of 1805, Lewis and his men made contact with the Shoshone Indians. And they found them at a landmark known as the Three Forks of the Missouri River. And if you look on your map, you can see that very clearly, the Three Forks of the Missouri River. Now, this was a place where three separate rivers would flow into the Missouri River. And Lewis and Clark named all three. One is called the Jefferson River, after President Thomas Jefferson. The other river is called the Madison River, which was named for Secretary of State James Madison. And the third river is known as the Gallatin River, which was named for Secretary of the Treasury Albert Gallatin. So on August 17, 1805, Lewis and his men made contact with the Shoshone Indians at a location known as the Three Forks of the Missouri River. It was a point where three separate rivers would flow into the Missouri River, all named by Lewis and Clark: the Jefferson River, named for President Thomas Jefferson; the Madison River, named for Secretary of State James Madison; and the Gallatin River, which was named for Secretary of the Treasury Albert Gallatin. If any of you kiddos are fishermen, anybody fish that area? The Jefferson River is a pretty good fishery. The Madison River has turned into a floating extravaganza where college kids and families float that river, so the fishing's not near as good because of the floating. But my favorite river in Montana is the Gallatin River. It's a river between Bozeman and Big Sky, or West Yellowstone. Very good fishery. But anyway, Three Forks of Missouri, obviously there's a town there present day called Three Forks, Montana. Now, we talked about Sacagawea. Hadn't been a great help as an interpreter throughout the expedition. She did help because she was a woman on the expedition, which let Indian tribes know this was not a military war party. She also advised them on what type of plants they could eat compared to those that they shouldn't eat. Well, it was at the Three Forks of the Missouri that Sacagawea began to really recognize the countryside. And this is when she becomes the most help as an interpreter. Okay? She had actually been in that area before because she was taken prisoner by another Indian tribe and recognized that area. So it's this point where Sacagawea becomes an asset to the expedition. So here's an interesting story. So as the expedition has met the Shoshone Indians and they're trying to communicate with the Shoshone Indians to purchase some horses, an important discovery was made that would be very, very beneficial for the Corps Discovery. Anybody know what happened when they were trying to communicate? Go ahead.
The chief of the tribe was Sacagawea's brother, I think.
Yeah, the chief of the Shoshone chief, Komeowe, who's on your ID sheet, and Sacagawea recognized each other. They were brother and sister and had been separated for many, 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 many years. So as the expedition communicated with the Shoshone Indians, an important discovery was made that would prove very beneficial for the Corps Discovery. The Shoshone chief, Komeowe, and Sacagawea recognized each other. They were brother and sister. This would assure what? The Corps Discovery would receive the horses they so desperately needed. Okay? A very, very beneficial discovery for the Corps of Discovery. Now, the Lewis and Clark expedition spent 2 weeks with the Shoshone Indians, getting a well-deserved rest before they began their final part of their journey to the Pacific Ocean. So they're going to spend 2 weeks with these friendly Shoshone Indians, obviously. and they are going to get a well-deserved rest before their final part of their journey to the Pacific. Now, other than horses, what else did the Lewis and Clark expedition receive of importance from the Shoshone Indians? No, what's that? Well, I didn't hear. Well, they recovered there, but what did they get before they left?
Information about what
Information and directions, because there's another tribe that knew information from that point on. Because what's their big concern? Getting over the Rocky Mountains. So, basically what happened is this successful meeting with the Shoshone was crucial as the tribe directed the expedition on the route through the mountains that would take them to the Columbia River. It wasn't going to be easy. These steep and rugged mountains would be what we know as the Bitterroot Mountains in western Montana, and the expedition would need to cross a tortuous trail now known as the Lolo Trail. Anybody been over to the Missoula, Montana area? Lolo, there's a little town called Lolo, kind of southwest of Missoula, and it's a Lolo Pass now, same trail that they took Lewis and Clark to. So, again, the successful meeting with the Shoshone was crucial. They're going to get the horses they need to get over this rugged trail, and they're also going to get directions from the Shoshone on which route to take to best get across the Rocky Mountains. And although it's not going to be easy, this steep and rugged trail is going to be, tortuous trail is going to be known as the Lolo Trail. So, on September 3rd, they leave the Shoshone, and on September 13th, 1805, they arrive at the base of the Lolo Trail on September 13th of 1805. And this is going to be a 140-mile trail through present-day Idaho.